I should start by saying I've worked night shifts for most of my adult life. Security jobs, warehouse jobs, overnight delivery runs. Anything that kept me away from crowds and daytime noise. I never minded long drives either. In fact, winter drives used to calm me. Empty roads, cold air, the hum of the engine, a straight stretch of black asphalt cutting through nothing. Back in 2019, I had a seasonal job delivering medical supplies between small clinics in rural areas of the north. I drove a white 2013 Toyota Hiace van, usually loaded with boxes of IV sets, gloves, wound dressings, stuff like that. Nothing dangerous, nothing valuable, nothing interesting. The pay wasn't good, but it was quiet work. Most nights I drove alone from around 9 p.m. till almost 3 a.m. This story happened around 12:40 a.m., December 18th. I remember the time because I had checked the dashboard clock right before things became strange. That night was colder than usual, around minus 11 degrees Celsius, which was brutal for that area. The snow wasn't too heavy though, so visibility was fine. The only weird thing was how empty the highway was. I didn't see a single oncoming car for maybe 30 minutes, just darkness and the soft flicker of distant snow hitting the headlights. About an hour into my route, I noticed something in the distance. A figure, far ahead, standing on the right shoulder of the road. It was too far for me to make out details at first. At that distance, on a highway like that, you can't tell if something is a person or a post until you're closer. But the shape didn't move, didn't shift, just stayed there, facing the lane. I figured maybe someone's car broke down. It happens all the time, especially in winter. So I slowed down a little, not much, just from 92 kilometers per hour to around 70, to see if they needed help. As I got closer, the figure didn't wave or turn or step back from the road. They just stayed completely still. 30 meters away now, headlights catching more detail. I could see it was a man, tall, wearing a long, dark coat. Not a winter jacket, a full coat. The type someone might wear in a city, not on a freezing highway in the middle of the night. He wasn't facing me. He was angled slightly away, head turned toward the forest. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Most stranded people wave both arms like crazy when they see headlights. They don't stare off into the tree line like they're listening for something. As the van approached him, I tapped the horn, just a quick, light beep, to let him know I was there. He didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't turn, didn't move, just stood there. I passed him slowly, maybe at 50 kilometers per hour, watching him through the passenger side window. I couldn't see his face, but I saw his posture clearly. His hands were stiff at his sides, not in his pockets, not shaking from the cold, just stiff, almost posed. As I drove past, something else hit me. There was no car anywhere nearby, no tire tracks, no hazards flashing, no footprints leading toward him. Nothing but untouched snow all around. I kept driving. For maybe 2 minutes, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he left a car earlier and walked too far. Maybe he was drunk and disoriented. Maybe he wasn't waving because he wasn't fully aware. But the longer I drove, the more wrong it felt. People don't just stand on frozen roadsides in thin clothing. Not like that. Not in that temperature. I reached for my phone to call emergency services, but right then, the van hit a dead spot with no signal. Pretty common for that stretch. So I just kept going, planning to call when the signal returned. But about 5 minutes later, I saw something that made my stomach drop so hard I felt nauseous. Up ahead, another figure, standing on the right shoulder of the road. Same distance away as the first, same posture, same dark coat, same angle of the head, turned slightly toward the forest. My first thought was, no way. I slowed down again, heart pounding now. As I got closer, the headlights revealed the same tall frame, the same coat, the same stiff stance. I swear to you, it looked exactly like the first man, as if he had somehow gotten ahead of me, which was impossible. Even if he sprinted through the forest, he wouldn't beat a van moving at highway speeds. And besides, The forest was so dense and dark that nobody could run through it without snowshoes or a headlamp. I felt the cold creeping into my chest as I drove past him, keeping my eyes forward this time. I didn't want to see his face. I didn't want to know if it really was the same man. I sped up again, this time to almost 100 kilometers per hour. My hands were shaking on the wheel. There were no towns for at least 25 kilometers in either direction. No exits. Nothing. Just the same stretch of woods and empty road. About 10 minutes passed. No more figures. No more strange shapes. I started convincing myself I had misinterpreted the second one. Maybe it was just another stranded guy. Bad coincidence. Highway weirdness happens. Long nights mess with your mind. But then, around 1:03 a.m., I saw headlights in the distance behind me. Finally, another vehicle. It was gaining fast, brightening the darkness in the rear view mirror. I couldn't tell what model it was yet, but the speed worried me. Nobody goes that fast on icy winter roads. Within 30 seconds, the headlights were right behind me, not tailgating me, just following, keeping perfect distance, not trying to pass. I watched it carefully, hoping it wasn't some drunk driver or reckless teenager. Then it flashed its high beams once, then again, then again. Not fast or aggressive, just 3 slow, deliberate flashes. I instinctively slowed down, thinking they were trying to signal something. Maybe something was wrong with my van. Maybe I had a box dragging or a tire issue. But when I slowed, the car behind slowed too, maintaining the same distance, same pace, same following position. I tried switching lanes even though it was a 2-lane highway with no oncoming traffic. The car copied me, left, right, back to center, perfectly synchronized. My heartbeat was thundering in my ears now. I couldn't see the driver. The headlights were too bright. All I could see was the dark silhouette of a vehicle, maybe a sedan, keeping its shape in the darkness. Then at 1:06 a.m., the car flashed its high beams again. Just once. This time, as the beams hit my mirrors, I saw something in the glow behind the car. A shape on the highway, standing on the shoulder. Another figure. The light caught the edge of a long, dark coat. I didn't slow down. I didn't look. I didn't breathe. Just kept driving. I didn't want to know if it was the same man again. The car behind me finally started falling back a bit. Then more. Then more. Not braking, just gradually drifting into the darkness behind me, as if intentionally letting distance grow. By 1:11 a.m., its headlights were gone, like it had vanished. I checked my phone. Signal was back. I called the regional emergency line, told them there were men standing on the highway and a vehicle following me strangely. The operator didn't take it seriously. She said it was probably stranded hikers and another driver trying to warn me. She told me to stop at the next gas station if I felt unsafe. I hung up. About 20 minutes later, I reached a small 24-hour gas station. I parked under bright lights, got out, and checked the van. Everything was fine. Tires were fine. Door latches were fine. Nothing strange on the exterior. I went inside for a coffee just to settle my nerves. When I came back outside, something made me stop. There were footprints around my van, single prints, not pairs, a trail leading from the highway, shoulder to the van, then around the back, then stopping near the passenger side door. They weren't my prints. I had only walked from the driver's side. These prints were bigger, heavier, deeper in the snow. The station had CCTV cameras, so I asked the old man working there if he could rewind the footage. He said the cameras had been down for 2 months. The footprints were gone by morning when the sun rose. The snowplow covered everything. I never saw the man in the coat again. Never saw the car that followed me. I finished that job 2 weeks later and took a daytime position closer to town. But sometimes when I drive at night in winter, I catch myself scanning the shoulder of the road, looking for a tall figure in a long dark coat, just to make sure he's not there. I've never been great with winters. Not the cold itself, I can handle that. What gets to me is the silence, the way snow absorbs every sound, the way the world feels padded, muffled, like you're walking inside some thick dead thing. Back in January of 2021, I took a 2-week house-sitting job for a coworker. He owned a small winter cabin about 34 miles outside our town, deep in a forest reserve. He needed someone to stay there because he'd had break-ins before. Hunters, bored teenagers, people who used the place to drink. Nothing dangerous, but enough to make him ask a favor. I agreed because I wanted quiet. I was going through a rough patch back then. Bad breakup, long work hours, not a lot of sleep. The idea of a cabin in the woods with no neighbors and no responsibilities except keeping a fire going sounded perfect. I should have known isolation never helps. The cabin itself was decent. Old wooden structure, metal roof, 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a little living room with a wood stove. The place had power but no Wi-Fi, no cell service unless you walked up a steep hill behind the property. I didn't mind. Sometimes disconnection feels good. The first 3 nights were peaceful, cold, but peaceful. I'd wake up around 7 or 8, make coffee, split some firewood, sweep snow off the front deck, maybe read an old paperback lying on the shelf. Around 4 p.m., the sun dipped behind the ridge and the temperature dropped fast, so I'd stay inside for the rest of the evening. It was on the 4th night, right before things began, that I first noticed something strange. Nothing dramatic, just off. I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom when I heard the faintest tapping on one of the windows. Not a knock, more like the tip of a glove brushing the glass. 3 soft, slow taps. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. The bathroom window faced the back of the cabin, toward the forest. There was no porch or decking behind the building, just snow, trees, and darkness. Maybe a branch, maybe the wind. But the thing is, the trees weren't close enough. There was at least a 5-meter gap from the cabin wall to the first line of trees. I waited. Nothing followed. Still, I checked the back door. Locked. Curtains closed. No footprints visible through the glass. I told myself it was nothing, just old wood shifting in the cold. But the tapping sound stayed in my head long after I went to sleep. The next night, things escalated. Slow at first. Too slow. It was around 10:52 p.m. I remember because I just put my phone down after checking the time. It had no service, but the clock still worked. I was in bed, lights off, only the sound of the stove ticking gently as the metal cooled. Then I heard crunching outside, snow being stepped on, not an animal. Not the soft, rapid steps of a deer or the skittering of a fox. These were slow, heavy steps, human steps. I lay still, barely breathing. The footsteps circled toward the back of the cabin. Slow, deliberate, like whoever it was didn't care if I heard them. The cabin didn't have motion lights, no neighbors, no passing cars, no sounds except those footsteps, breaking the frozen quiet. They stopped near the bathroom window, the same window I'd heard the tapping on. Silence for maybe 10 seconds. Then, tap, tap, tap. Same rhythm, same softness. This time I didn't move at all, didn't breathe, didn't get up to check. Whoever was out there already knew I was inside. That part didn't scare me as much as the fact that they weren't trying to break in. Just tapping, just letting me know they were there. The tapping stopped. The footsteps didn't come back around. They just faded into the snow. I barely slept that night. Morning brought a bit of courage, enough to check outside. I walked around the cabin slowly, expecting footprints, a straight trail toward the window, maybe circling the house. But what I found was stranger. There were no footprints at all behind the cabin. None. But there were prints along the tree line, human-shaped, deep, leading parallel to the cabin, maybe 10 meters away. They weren't fresh. They already had a thin crust of frozen snow on top. Whoever walked behind the cabin hadn't walked up to it. They'd stopped near the tree line. So why did it sound like footsteps right against the wall? I didn't have an answer. I pushed the thought aside and spent most of the day chopping firewood just to clear my head. Physical work always helps. By dusk, I convinced myself that maybe the sound had echoed weirdly off the cabin walls. Maybe it only seemed like the steps were close. But when night came again, I didn't feel safe. Night 6 is when it became undeniable. I tried staying awake, reading a book by the stove. Around midnight, my eyelids got heavy, so I decided to brush my teeth and turn in. As I stepped into the bathroom, I saw something that made every muscle in my body clench. The bathroom window, the one facing the back forest, had a handprint on it, a full, clear handprint, 5 fingers, a palm, pressed into the fogged glass from the outside. It was big too, bigger than mine, not huge or monstrous, just adult, male, cold enough to melt condensation in the shape of a perfect print. I didn't move for maybe 20 seconds, just stared at it. Then from somewhere behind the cabin, crunch, a single step, then another, slow, heavy. I turned off the bathroom light at once. The cabin went dark except for the faint orange glow from the stove. The footsteps came closer. Not around the cabin, straight toward the bathroom window. I stood frozen in the center of the bathroom, barely breathing. The window was at my back, a thin sheet of cold glass between me and whoever was out there. Then, tap, right behind my left shoulder. Tap, higher this time on the glass. Tap. I felt something shift in my chest, some mixture of fight, flight, and disbelief. I didn't know whether to run or hide or yell. The tapping stopped. For a full minute, nothing happened. Then the footsteps faded away into the trees, crunch by crunch, until there was only silence again. I locked myself in the bedroom that night with a chair against the door. The next morning changed everything. I went outside, heart pounding, certain I'd find deep footprints all around the cabin. But again, nothing near the house. No prints leading to the bathroom window. None circling the building. None under the window at all. Only prints along the tree line, same as before. Deep, heavy, slow, parallel to the cabin, like someone pacing back and forth out there for hours, watching. The handprint on the window was still there, though now faint from the sun. I thought about packing and leaving, but the nearest main road was 5 miles away, and snow was starting again. If my car failed, I'd be stuck out there with whoever was in the trees. Plus, I couldn't shake the feeling that something about the prints was wrong. Why would footsteps sound inches from the cabin when the prints were meters back in the trees? Why would tapping sound like fingertips on glass when the snow below the window was untouched? Like the sounds and the physical reality didn't match. Like whoever was out there didn't need to stand close to the cabin to reach it. I stopped thinking about that immediately. Night 7 was the worst night of my life. I didn't bother staying in the living room. The stove's light freaked me out, made shadows dance. I sat in the bedroom with the lights off, bundled in blankets, listening to the wind against the roof. For a while it was quiet, too quiet. Around 1:17 a.m., a soft noise broke the silence. Not tapping this time, not footsteps. It was humming, a low, slow hum, a man's hum, almost like someone absent-mindedly humming a tune while doing a chore. It came from behind the cabin, right near the bathroom window. I didn't move. The humming grew slightly louder, never fast, never urgent, just steady, like he was directly facing the window, like he was enjoying himself. I covered my mouth with my hand to muffle my breathing. After maybe 30 seconds, the humming shifted, grew quieter, as if whoever was humming had turned away. Then I heard snow crunching, not toward the trees, not away from the cabin, but toward the front of the house, the side where the living room windows were. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Slow steps, then silence. I didn't know which window he was at. The cabin had 3 at the front, all with thin curtains. The stove popped loudly, and I almost screamed. I don't know how long I lay there, probably 20 minutes, maybe more. Then, the living room floor creaked, not loud, just one soft, almost apologetic creak. Directly inside the cabin, right near the stove. I stopped breathing completely. There was no mistaking it. Someone was inside. I waited for another creak. or footsteps, or anything. But nothing came. Just stillness. I stayed in the bedroom until sunrise. Didn't sleep. Didn't blink much either. Morning light didn't bring relief. It brought something worse. When I finally got the courage to open the bedroom door, the cabin was empty. No footprints inside, no melted snow, nothing disturbed. But on the living room window, drawn into the frost from the inside, was a long, horizontal streak, like a finger dragged slowly across the cold glass. One single line, not a word, not a drawing, just a line. As if someone stood there in the dark, watching me sleep in the next room, dragging one finger across the glass before leaving. I packed everything in 10 minutes. Didn't care if I left anything behind. I drove straight to town without stopping, almost skidding twice on turns, gripping the wheel so hard my hands hurt. My coworker asked why I left early. I told him the cabin was too cold. He didn't ask anything else. I've never gone back to the woods near mile 34. The cabin is still there. People rent it sometimes, nothing has ever been reported. But sometimes when snow begins to fall and the world goes quiet, I remember that humming, that tapping, and that single finger line on the window, drawn from the inside without footsteps leading in or out. I've done security work on and off for years. Nothing glamorous, just night shifts, empty buildings, quiet hallways. You learn to stay awake in stillness. You learn to hear things most people never notice. Back in February 2020, before everything in the world got weird, I picked up a temporary contract at a winter storage facility on the outskirts of town. Basically a big fenced lot where people parked boats, RVs, trailers, and equipment during the cold months. My job was simple. Walk the perimeter twice a night, check the locks on the gates, keep an eye on the cameras, call the owner if anything looks suspicious. It was honestly the easiest money I'd made in a while. The facility sat about 4 miles from the nearest road, surrounded by old farmland and a thin band of woods. No houses nearby, no passing traffic after dark. Just one long gravel driveway and silence. Winter nights there were brutally quiet. The kind of quiet where your ears ring from the lack of sound. My office was a small prefab guard shack at the center of the lot, with 2 heaters, a bad coffee machine, and an old Dell desktop hooked to the security cameras. The shack had windows on all 4 sides, so you could see everything if the floodlights were on. That place felt peaceful to me. It doesn't feel peaceful when I think about it now. It started small, as these things always do. On my second night around 1:30 a.m., I was doing paperwork when I noticed movement on camera 4. The northeast corner, a shadow, just a quick one, looked like someone walking along the fence. At first I thought it was an animal, but animals don't walk upright, and they don't move with slow, steady strides. I leaned closer. The camera flickered for half a second, just a little digital static, and when it came back, the shadow was gone. Okay, weird, but not enough to raise alarms. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped outside, and walked toward the northeast fence. The snow there was untouched, smooth as a sheet of paper. No footprints, no indentations, no trail leading away. Nothing. Wind, I thought. Probably wind messing with the camera. I went back to the shack and didn't think about it again. 3 nights later, it got stranger. I was doing my first perimeter walk at 12:07 a.m. The moon was low but bright, lighting the snow with that bluish glow you only see in deep winter. My boots crunched with each step, my breath fogged up in front of me. About halfway around the fence, I noticed something odd. A single footprint in the snow. Just one. Human-shaped, facing toward the fence. It was maybe size 11 or 12, big enough to catch my attention. But that wasn't the weird part. The weird part was that the print went down deeper than any footprint should. Almost like someone much heavier than a normal person had stepped into it. Or like someone stood there for a long, long time. There were no other prints before it or after it. No trail leading in or out. Just that one, sitting alone near the fence like someone had dropped it out of the sky. I stood there longer than I should have. I felt watched. Nothing happened though, so I finished the walk and headed back to the shack. When I checked camera 4 later, the screen was completely normal. I told myself the footprint had probably been left earlier and I just hadn't noticed. But that was a lie. I walked the same path every night. I would have seen it. Something about that lone print stuck with me the rest of the shift. But the real story happened about a week later, during a heavy snowstorm. Visibility was awful. The wind was brutal. The floodlights around the lot cast long, blurry cones of light through the shifting snow. Everything looked like it was moving, even when it wasn't. I wasn't supposed to do a perimeter walk in that weather, but the cameras kept glitching. Camera 2 would flicker, then camera 7, then camera 4, the problem child. So around 1:44 a.m., I bundled up. Heavy coat, scarf, gloves, hood, grabbed the flashlight, stepped out. I could barely see 5 meters ahead. The wind cut right through me. My eyes watered instantly from the cold. I kept to the inside fence line, counting my steps out loud because the storm made everything feel disorienting. Snow blew sideways like white smoke. At the halfway point near the northeast corner, I saw something through the snow. A shape, a tall figure standing perfectly still near the fence. I froze. My flashlight beam shook when I raised it. The light caught just enough to show a dark outline, human-sized but motionless. "Hello!" I shouted, voice muffled by the wind. The figure didn't move. I took a few slow steps closer. The wind screamed in my ears. The snow stung my cheeks. My heart hammered so hard I felt it in my throat. Another few steps. The flashlight caught the shape fully now. But it wasn't a person. It was a tarp, one of those plastic covers used to wrap boats. A piece of it had blown off and gotten caught halfway up the fence, snagged on a metal hook. It flapped lazily in the wind. I let out a long breath I didn't know I was holding. Just a tarp. Just a stupid tarp. I brushed the snow off and secured it tighter so it wouldn't flap loose again. The storm didn't ease up, so I hurried back to the shack. When I got inside and shut the door, the sudden quiet made my ears ring. I sat at the desk, took off my gloves, rubbed my hands near the heater. Then I glanced at the monitor. Camera 4. My body went cold all over again. There was someone walking the perimeter. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, moving slowly along the fence, right where I'd just been. I watched him take one deliberate step at a time. 1, 2, 3. His outline got lost in the storm every few seconds, only to reappear like a shadow between flakes. He wasn't running. He wasn't stumbling. He wasn't lost. He was walking the perimeter, the exact perimeter I just walked, tracing my steps. I stared at the monitor, heart thudding, waiting for his face to turn toward the camera. It never did. He kept his head angled down or away, just enough that the hood or shadows hid every detail. His pace never changed. Step, step, step. I grabbed the radio, my phone, anything to call for backup. No signal. The storm had killed the reception again. I watched him approach the northeast corner, the spot where I'd mistaken the tarp for a person. He stopped there, just stood, motionless. The storm blew hard enough that the camera vibrated slightly. Snow streaked across the lens. But the man didn't move. He stood there for maybe 30 seconds. Then with mechanical slowness, he raised one hand, not in a wave, not to gesture, just lifted it until it rested against the fence, and he pressed it flat, right where the lone footprint had been a few days earlier. I whispered out loud without meaning to. "What are you doing?" As if he could hear me. Then the camera glitch came. Just a small flicker, half a second of static. When it returned, the man was gone. Not walking away, not running, just gone, like he'd never been there. My breath came out shallow and fast. I stared at the screen, waiting, scrolling to other cameras. Nothing. No movement. No figure. No distortion. Just empty snow swirling under yellow floodlights. I didn't leave the shack for the rest of the shift. Morning came. The storm stopped. I forced myself outside. Part of me needed to see the ground with my own eyes. I needed footprints. I needed something real to hold on to. But the snow was fresh and untouched, smooth everywhere, except one place, at the northeast corner, where the man had stood. There, pressed deep into the snow, was a single footprint. The shape matched the one from days earlier. Same size, same depth, same angle. But again, just one. No prints leading toward it, none leading away. I checked the fence where he'd pressed his hand. There was frost melted there, a faint shape, not a full print. More like the outline of warmth on cold metal. The cameras didn't catch anything else that day. I reported the footage to the owner. He watched it once, rubbed his face and said, "Probably reflection, or the storm messing with the motion sensors." But he didn't look convinced. I finished my contract 2 weeks later. Never had another incident. Never saw the figure again. But sometimes, especially in winter, when snow starts piling high and the world goes quiet, I remember that man on camera 4. I remember how he retraced my exact path, how he stood where I stood, how he pressed his hand to the fence like he was marking something or measuring it. And I think about the one thing I never admitted to anyone. When I was walking the perimeter in that storm, I swear I heard footsteps behind me, soft, slow, perfectly in sync with mine. But every time I turned around, there was only snow.